So, a couple things. I think tonight, I think tonight's going to feel a little different. Usually, I get up here and I preach whatever, and I think there'll be a little bit of that. But I think that tonight, what I really kind of want to communicate to you guys is kind of like this. If you and I were going to go out like for coffee, and you asked me this question, Tyler, what is your biggest hope or wish or dream for me? And so if we're at Brioyas, we're at Grinds or Starbucks, Lord willing, we would be sitting across and you say, hey Tyler, what do you hope for me? What do you wish for me? Like, what do you want from me? And that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight. I don't get the opportunity to go to coffee with every one of you, but I do get some coffee with some of you guys. And these are the things that I would say to you. But before we do that, this summer, although that like Wednesday night is like stopping, like our summer schedule, like there's a lot of things going on. And so I'm going to put that on the screen really fast. You can feel free to take a picture of it. I do want to point something out. Dude, we've got a Buffalo float trip coming up at the end of this month, May 29th. This is like the best way for you to kick off your summer. It is going to be so much fun. I'm just curious, anybody been on a float trip with FSM before? Anybody? Man, it is so much fun. You can register online. You can go to register online, and we'll put maybe we'll post about it something on Instagram or something like that. You can post, you can get registered there. We would love for you to come and join us. But we got a couple other things. We got a movie night. Man, we've done movie nights past couple years. Dude, we've got Three Flamingos night coming up. Man, I'm telling you, if you like free froyo, that's your night, okay? We got awesome, cool. If you like, man, there's a thing on there called Guys Night, Girls Night. This is something brand new that we've never done before, but it's going to be super fun. It's going to be us guys doing a bunch of guy stuff and a bunch of girls doing a bunch of girl stuff, and there may be a competition. I don't know. I just don't know, okay? Like, that may happen, but I don't know. What else we got? Broom ball. Broom ball is super fun. We'll go down to the stadium in Little Rock, and we get on the ice with our shoes on, and we play hockey. It's, like, super fun. Anyways, that's kind of what the summer is coming up. We don't stop doing stuff with FSM. We kind of ramp it up to some degree, and we got some other things that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But back to the matter at hand, which is this. If you and I were going out to coffee and you asked me, man, what's your biggest hope and your wish for me? This is it. And so I can remember years and years and years ago, there was a show that came out with that I watched with my grandmother. And this was I was like 10 years old. Like, this was a long time ago. And it was this show called I don't know if I can say it, Masked Magician. That's hard to say, Masked Magician. Anyways, it's a magician that wore a mask. And the whole premise behind the show was that this magician, would do a trick. He would do a trick, and then he would do like the unthinkable. He would do the trick, and then he would tell you how the trick worked. Now that's like rule number one. That's like magician school, like 101. Like, you don't tell people how you do your trick. And so there was like a ton of like backlash against this guy because he was sharing some of these like really like awesome tricks with like the world. And so what I loved about it, though, what was so intriguing about it, was that you got to kind of peek behind the curtain. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of cool to see a magic trick and then see how it was done. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever been to Disney World, but like there's just like magic that happens everywhere you go, and then it's really cool to figure out how they did that. So there's we get to like peek behind the curtain a little bit, and that's what we're gonna do tonight. Is that I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna let you peek behind the curtain, like my biggest hopes, my biggest wishes, my biggest dreams for you as young people. Because this is a thing, like, I get asked a lot from you guys. You guys say, what do you do for a living? This is it. Like, this is what I do. I don't work anywhere else. This is what I do. And I think about you guys a lot. I pray for you guys a ton, because I have some specific things that I feel like the Lord can do in your life. And so I'm going to talk to you guys about two things, my biggest hopes and wishes for you. And so the first one is this. My biggest wish for you is that you would understand that your faith is a process. My biggest wish for you is that you would understand that your faith is a process. I think oftentimes, and you've probably heard me say this before, but oftentimes I think we think of our faith as a product that we have rather than a process that we are in. And I want you to understand, though, that like, even the people that follow Jesus, like when Jesus was on the earth here, like their faith was in a process. It wasn't like, oh, I believe, like I didn't believe, oh, now I believe and everything is great and I understand all of it. That's not the way that it worked. In fact, there is this way of like wrestling that we have to walk through. And there's this guy named Peter, and who Peter followed Jesus, and he like knew, like he saw Jesus, and Jesus had like these 12 guys that followed him, and then he had like 3 guys that he was super close with, and one of those guys was Peter. And so there's this one time at the end of Jesus' ministry on earth, and he ate the Last Supper, which was on a Thursday, and he knew that he was about to go and die on the cross for everybody. But this is kind of what happened. And so that's going to, and this is what it says. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And then Jesus said to them, and this is Jesus talking to the group of people, to his disciples. And he says, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Now this is Peter. Peter answered him, he's pointing to them, "Though all of them will fall away because of you, I will never fall away." And Jesus said, "Truly, I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter said, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same. So here's the scene. Jesus has just said, hey, here's the thing. I've been telling you guys that I'm going to die. I'm going to come back, but I'm going to die. And he's saying, look, all of you guys are going to run like little babies. You are going to be so scared. You are going to totally deny me like this night. And Peter's like, there is not a chance in the world that's going to happen, Jesus. I will die with you tonight before I deny you. All of those guys, those lesser disciples, Jesus, they may fall away, but I won't. A couple of verses later, this is what happens. Now Peter, Jesus has been arrested. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." And then when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." And a little while later, the bystanders came up to him and said to Peter, "Certainly you two are one of them, for your accent betrays you." And then he began to invoke a curse on himself, and he began to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered what Jesus said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Let's paint the scene again. Jesus said, "You're going to deny me." And Peter's like, "There's no way. I'm not. Those guys may, but I'm not." So he's sitting over here. He's kind of warming himself by a fire, and he's trying to see what's kind of going on because he doesn't know. Jesus has been arrested. He's not there anymore. And like a little girl comes up to him. "Don't you know Jesus?" "I don't know." "Shh, I don't know him." "Shh." And then another little girl comes up to him. "Weren't you with Jesus?" He's like, "Dude, no, go away, little girl. Like, that's not it at all." This guy was scared, terrified of a little girl. This is a grown man. He's a little girl. Scaring him. He says, no, shh. Peter denies Jesus 3 times, just like Jesus said he would. But that's not the end of the story. See, Peter goes on, and yes, he fell away in that night, and he denied Jesus, and he wept bitterly. But I tell you, Jesus came back, and he actually commissioned Peter to be part of the early church. And Peter began to be one of the founders of what we call the church now. And because of his faithfulness, millions and billions of people have known or know Jesus right now because of the faithfulness of Peter. He even wrote part of our Bible. And here's the thing, though. I think we need to wrestle with this question: would Peter be as faithful as he was later in life if he had not wrestled with the fact of denying Jesus? You guys tracking with me? Like if Peter had not gone through that place of where he denied, where Jesus said, "You're going to deny me," he's like, "I'm not going to deny you," and he denied him anyways. Do you think that his faith would be as strong later if he had not walked through that season of doubt and of wrestling and of denying Jesus? See, here's the thing. Even though Peter totally failed, he totally sinned, he totally denied Jesus, and it looks like this isolated event that Peter, if we looked at it, he is a total failure in this time. But if we look at Peter's whole life, man, how much more does this little part of his life influence and impact the rest of his faith? Because Peter goes on and he begins to disciple people and love people and share the gospel with people, and thousands of people get saved when he preaches. And so I think what I want you to understand is that your faith is not a product that you have. You may have a horrible week where you totally fell away, man. You've made a ton of mistakes, and you're like, dude, Jesus does not love me anymore because of what I've done. Or maybe you've gone through a season where life has been so hard that you don't even know if you can get out of bed, and you're just frustrated with God. Man, how much more, it looks like a total failure then, but how much more does your faith get influenced later in life because of what you're going through now? See, if we thought about our faith as a product, man, we would fail every single day. But if we look at our faith as a process that we're in, it's something that's ongoing. Man, it gives a little bit more vibrancy to how we understand our faith. And so for me, in my faith journey, here's kind of where I started. I was raised in a church that was called the Catholic Church. I was raised in a Catholic church. I come from a long line of Catholics. And man, there's a lot of different things as you think about church history and theology and all those things. But one specific thing that the Catholic Church believes is that Mary, the mother of Jesus, lived a totally perfect and sinless life. Now, that's what I grew up believing. That's what I was told from the time I was a little boy. And so I grew up in Catholic school and Catholic church, and we totally honored Mary because she lived a sinless life. In fact, there's a church and a school in North Little Rock called the Immaculate Conception. Have you heard of it? It's an elementary school down there. Here's the thing, that the Immaculate Conception, that refers to how Mary was conceived, not Jesus, because Catholics believe that she was immaculately conceived in her mother's womb. She lived a totally perfect and sinless life because the Son of God cannot come from somebody that's sinful. That's the belief. Now, for my whole life, I believe it. You may have never heard that before, but I was sitting where you were when I was about your age, and I remember my youth pastor's wife was teaching about Mary, and she said this. She said, hey, Mary, she struggled. She sinned. She really wrestled with things. Could you imagine the doubt that she had she was a virgin, but then she got pregnant with the Son of God, and now she's supposed to be, imagine how much doubt and frustration she had. And I can remember sitting exactly where we were, and I was like, that is totally wrong. Mary was without sin. Mary did not have any sin at all. She lived a totally perfect life. This was the beginning of what I call my first deconstruction of my faith. Because my faith had been built up, and there were some things that maybe weren't right. There were maybe some things that were maybe a little off. And so what I had to do is not say, hey, this is my faith. It is the product that I have. Here's my faith. Look how faithful I am. No. I had to then enter into a process and say, okay, I see that this part of my faith, this doesn't make sense with this other part of faith. So I need to throw this part of my faith away because it's not true anymore. Or it was never true. So I talk about this deconstruction that I had, and this began for me the processing of faith that I was in. And I just hope that you understand. I hope that you understand that your faith is a process that you're in. It's not a product that you have. And here's what I'm telling you. You guys come up and ask me questions all the time. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make you a solid promise. If you come up to me and you say, Tyler, I'm just wrestling with this thing about God, or, we were just singing that God is good, like you are good, and you're never going to let me down. I feel like God lets me down. I will never say to you, you just got to believe more. You just have to have more faith. I'm not going to say that. I will never say you just got to believe stronger. You got to make sure, man, your faith is too weak. You need to just believe more. I'm going to say, man, that is tough. It is really hard sometimes in life when God doesn't seem like he's good. And it does seem like God lets us down. Let's talk about that. Because I want you to understand that your faith is a process that you're in. It is a thing that we need to have a conversation about. In fact, every week I go to Dalton, who was leading worship, and I was like, dude, I was thinking about this thing today about God, and I don't even know if it's true, but I need to vocalize it because I got to process this thing because I want to make sure that my faith is not something that's stagnant. It's not something that's still. It's not something that just sits there. It's not a product, but it's a process. It's a thing that we're ongoing doing. That's the way of faith. And I hope for you that you understand that your faith is a process. It's not a product. And this is where I want you to understand that I want to honor your doubt. I'm going to honor your questions, and I want you to as well. If you've got questions about God, if you doubt God, hey, for me, that's great because I want to begin a conversation with you, or your D group leaders want to have a conversation with you. Because I don't think that God is like moved by our doubt, or he's not like worried about our questioning, but he wants us to enter into these so that maybe, much like Peter, it may feel like our faith is a failure right now, but later on we understand, oh, man, that made my faith stronger, and it was a process that I was in. So, if we were sitting across a coffee, I want you to understand, your faith is not a product that you have, but it's a process that you're in. The second thing that I would say, that my biggest wish and my biggest hope for you is that you would experience a personal mission. I want you to experience personal mission. And the thing about this is that, man, when we talk about faith being a process, I think sometimes we think about our faith like, man, I'm super faithful. I love Jesus, and I come to Wednesday nights. Maybe I raise my hand. Maybe I've been to Winter Chill, or I'm in a D group. And those are all amazing things when it comes to following Jesus. But the thing that I want you to understand is that is just a part of your faith. That is just a part of following Jesus. And I don't want you to be misled. Because this is what it says in the Bible. This is the book of James, and this is what it says. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or a sister is poorly clothed or lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace and be warmed and filled, without giving them the things that needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. So what I want you to understand is, yes, your faith is a process, but part of that process is that I want you to experience a personal mission. Because what James is saying, he's like, look, you can say you have all the faith in the world. You can go to as many worship services. You can go to Sunday, Wednesday. Like, you can do that. You can be part of a D group. You can go to Winter. You can do all that. But unless you have works from your faith is dead. Unless we are entering into a personal mission with God, unless we are living into the commission that Jesus gave us to go and make disciples, man, our faith is dead. So I don't want you to be misled to think that just because you're here, you're good. No, Jesus invites us to live on a mission with him. And so for you, I want you to understand that yes, your faith is a process, but part of that process is that I want you to experience a personal mission. When I was in 10th or 11th grade, the summer of my 10th grade year, I think is when it was, I went on my first mission trip. And I went all the way down to the metropolis of Marianna, Arkansas. And then we stayed at this camp called Bear Creek Camp, which had a creek on just right next to it, which sounds super nice, except that was a breeding ground for mosquitoes. There was about a gallon of warm water that we shared amongst, the camp of 100 of us. We stayed outside and we did this and that and the other. And I built a wheelchair ramp with a group of people. There's about 5 of us. I built a wheelchair ramp for a lady named Miss Easter. And Miss Easter hadn't been out of her house in about 5 years. And we've talked about this before, but if you can imagine not being able to get out of your house for 5 years, I mean, that means you don't get to go to the grocery store. It doesn't mean that you get to go to church. It doesn't mean that you, even in the case of an emergency, that you even get to be able to get out of your house. And so Miss Easter's been in our house, and she kind of laid in a hospital bed. And I can't tell you, I had been in church, and I had learned, and I had done all this, but then when you were able to actually nail a board to a wheelchair ramp and know that you are actually helping restore the kingdom of God on this earth because this lady needed to get out of her house so that she could go to church and she could hear the gospel. Man, that is part of living on this mission with God. My hope for you, students, is that you would experience that kind of service. That you would be able to take your faith that is in you right now, this processing that you're doing in your faith, and you would say, you know what, I'm going to go and be the hands and feet of Jesus. You've heard me say this before. When you go serve, it takes your faith from just being black and white, being classroom-like, but then it goes to being color where you're able to actually go and serve the people of God. Jesus said that we're supposed to love God and love people, and we go and love people by helping them and serving them. So my hope for you, students, is that you would experience a personal mission. Now, the band can come back up, and we're about to sing and worship and close this year out right. But I want you guys to understand that I deeply care about what we call like your spiritual walk. And so I want you to understand that if there is ever a moment where you're wrestling with your faith, here at FSM, we will honor your doubt because it's okay. We will honor your doubt because doubt is okay. Questioning is okay. We want to walk with you through that and help you process that. I also want you to understand that whether it's at the church that you go to or here, there are places that you can serve. In fact, there are people that sit in this room that made this night happen. You see them on the stage, but there are people in the tech booth, but there are people who made sure the chairs and tables got set up out there. There's a guy that comes here every Wednesday to make sure that these chairs get set up because they want to serve. And so my hope for you students, my hope for you guys this summer, as you walk with the Lord, is that one, you understand your faith is a process, but also that you would experience a personal mission. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We really do for just the fact that Jesus came and died for us, that you love us, that you care for us, that you sent Jesus to die for us, all of those things. And so, Father, I just pray over this group of young people right now. God, that if there is a doubt that's coming up or if there's questions, God, I pray that they would be able to process that, verbalize that, get that out so that so they understand that they're processing their faith and it is a good thing, that they would continue to grow in their faith. And Father, I pray that as we are sent out from this place, God, as we've got people going on mission trips and all of those things, God, I pray that every student in this room would experience some sort of personal mission. They would be able to experience serving somebody, all for your name and for your glory. So God, we love you. In Jesus' name.